Texas Parks and Wildlife fiscal year, September 1 to August 31. However, that NIFWIF money expires this March 31st. So we're trying to figure out where we go from here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on the agenda. This past RFP for a request for proposals was open from May 15th to June 30th. We received a total of 28 proposals, so that's pretty good. A little bit down from last year, but the cost share was way up. We received almost $300,000 worth of proposals for 6,500 acres. Our average cost share, or our average cost per acre, has decreased significantly since 2017. We're now at $44.83. This year, our steering committee decided to approve 19 of those proposals for a total cost share of $225,000, impacting 5,700 acres, where about 1,800 of those acres are through the Neches River Habitat Incentive Program. You can see the distribution of our projects across the CDN, the 29 CDN counties, as it relates to all of our priority areas too. The dark blue is the highest priority area. We've had a total of 61 projects, where 34 of those projects are complete, the 2017, 2018, and about half of the 2019 projects are complete. The 2020 projects are in progress. We have 26 projects in progress or planned for this next year, 2020, 2021 year. So you can see most of our projects are focused in that northern Neches River area. So I guess we just have a couple of rock stars in that area, and they've told all of their neighbors that to get some Habitat Incentive Program money. So that's where the majority of our projects are focused. All right, here's our standard Habitat Incentive practice distribution and our Neches River Habitat Incentive Program practice distribution. To note, the Neches River Habitat Incentive Program is zero ground disturbance, so we only offer the prescribed burning and herbicide practices. So we're still at majority prescribed burning for that one. The standard HIP, we are also at majority prescribed burning these days. This includes all of our projects from 2017 to 2020. So we're almost at 83% prescribed burning projects. The 9.6% is herbicide of the standard HIP. Timber stand improvement, that includes practices like mulching. Reforestation, less than 1%. That includes projects with hardwood planting or pine planting. And then native grass establishment was about 3%, and that practice was only offered the very first year that we had the Habitat Incentive Program. So through the years, we have slowly but surely made our way into more prescribed burning than anything else. Our project manager agency, this is based on total projects. We have, of course, it's still leaning very heavily towards Texas Parks and Wildlife. They have the most people on the ground. The NWTF is just me on 8 different projects. Our Fish and Wildlife folks, we have 2 project managers on 7 projects. And for a Texas Forest Service, we have 2 project managers on 4 projects. And this does not include the project managers that have submitted proposals. We do have, this is just projects that have been approved. We've had several other folks submit projects that were not and ended up approved. But we would still lean very heavily on Texas Parks and Wildlife for that. Here we are, our overall summary of every year we've had the Habitat Incentive Program. You can see the first year we had a very high cost per acre. We had only 942 acres completed for $187,000. We've slowly moved towards that lower cost per acre by funding more prescribed burning projects, and we're able to get more habitat work on the ground if we have a lower cost per acre. So the total acres impacted, you can see the RFP 19 completed and RFP 19 in progress. The completed majority of Neches River projects are the ones that are complete. We had about half and half complete for the standard habitat incentive program this year, and there were a lot of reasons beyond our control, including, you know, weather, a wet spring, and then COVID-19 also had an impact on several projects, where folks just weren't comfortable having contractors on their property, or they were in the oil business and just didn't have the money to pay for their project up front anymore. So we've had several like that, but there have been several extensions that have been granted, so we can hopefully finish them this coming fiscal year. So total, since 2017, we have completed habitat work on 10,844 acres, and we still have 6,684 acres in progress. We've paid out over $500,000 now. We just hit that benchmark this past month, so that's pretty exciting. And we still have $277,000 obligated for this coming year. And we've completed 34 projects and have 26 projects in progress still, for a total of 61 projects, or 660 projects. And here's just a great example of a landowner this past year, one of our Neches River Habitat Incentive Program landowners. He sent this email to me with these pictures, and here's a direct quote from him. He said, "Saw a large, at least 10 flock of turkeys today on my Neches farm. I knew burns were good for turkey habitat, but sure didn't know it would work within a week, LOL." So he was pretty darn excited that he was getting turkeys on his game cameras. We had told him, you know, you burn more and you might bring turkeys to your property. They'll come for that, all that fresh food and whatnot. So he was pretty excited that they actually did show up. He had burned 415 acres and now has turkeys. So hopefully he'll tell all of his neighbors to burn, and they'll bring turkeys to their properties. So with that, I will take any questions about it. And also just to note, if you do have a cooperator agreement that has not been signed yet for this coming year, please get those to me as soon as possible, because work cannot begin. I still have a couple that I have not received cooperator agreements from, but other than that, I'll take any questions. I see some in the chat. Ruben, how many proposals did you see come from private sector biologists and companies? Well, in the rules basically of the Habitat Incentive Program, we don't allow anybody that's not on an affiliated organization through the CDN to submit proposals. So we technically didn't have any that were submitted from private sector biologists, but we did have some that were submitted through Parks and Wildlife biologists. So out of our 28 proposals, I would say maybe 3 came from private sector folks. And then Laura Ashley, minimum acreage needed for turkey reintroduction is 10,000 contiguous acres for an eastern turkey restocking.
Yeah, I think there was quite a few folks that wanted to talk about the HIP request for proposals. You know, how things are put together, and comments on how we can maybe improve on what we've got. You know, the Northeast Texas Standard Assistance, the HIP program itself, has a combination of funds in there, and the project evaluation criteria, if you'll scroll down there, you know, we asked for certain things, and in that package, I think the scoring sheet is where people are wondering, where could we pick up additional points, or where could we do better on our projects, and this is where we want you to use the chat box if you have specific questions about about the evaluation criteria, we'd like to bring that up at this point. You have of course, is the package complete? Yes or no? There's 10 points just for a complete package. And so for those folks that identify all the elements of the package, that is an important element in itself. The geographic priorities, so far, we have received a few projects outside of those, the hot spots, the areas that are red on the map, and we'll refer to that map later. See if we, so with that in mind, if the project occurs within those red areas are in that buffer, you know, you're going to get more points than those in the gray. And I think that's an important consideration. And that is something that we've talked about trying to refine, perhaps extending that down into the longleaf, the T-lit areas. And we have expanded, as you know, the areas on the north, the GRIP counties that are up there in Hunt, Fannin, Lamar, Red River, Delta counties, and in the longleaf, the Texas Longleaf and Implementation Team group are in those lower counties where you see the purple and the green. So we have overlap with the other incentive programs, and you can see that not every area within those overlapping counties have the highest priority for the highest score or the scoring criteria. Does anyone have any questions on that? If you do, put them on the chat box or raise your hand. We'll let you speak up.
I see that Reagan had a question. Is there a cost per acre that would guarantee approval for projects? There's not necessarily a cost per acre, I would say, that would guarantee, but since we do send out the evaluation criteria here, essentially you could just rank yourself out and see where you would rank on that. Is your proposal package complete? Where are you located within the CDN priority areas? Does your landowner have a good cooperation history? Is there a management plan on the property? And another thing that could really help us when we're evaluating proposals is answering essentially all of these questions within that proposal package. Mentioning if there is a plan that does exist on the property, like Texas Parks and Wildlife, TFS, NRCS, any of those plans would count. And basically just saying what the good management practices the landowner's already doing. So yeah, just essentially answering these questions that are included in this project evaluation criteria could help you and us out. Jamie's question, is there a KML or shapefile of the priorities available? I have that, so I can send it to you. I don't know if we have, I think we've provided that in the past with the RFP, just so folks with ArcMap can use that to see where their projects fall. So Jamie, I can send that to you.
And we can also, one thing we can do is make sure we have an updated file that can be downloaded from our website as well. We always post, or the last 2 years we've posted the RFP on the website to make it easier for folks. And with that, we could put the shapefile there as well. That's good, a good suggestion. You know, one of the things that comes up all the time is cost per acre. And down at the bottom of the sheet,
Can you unmute Lee, Bill?
I see that. I will do that. But that cost per acre is something that is something we look at after we've let me see. There, we should be unmuted, Lee. But the cost per acre then becomes a factor when we look at again, if you can get 200 acres of habitat for less than $50 an acre, you know, it competes well with those that have a much higher cost per acre. And many times when we see those, we'll have 6 or 8 projects that are virtually within 20 points of each other. And that's where those tiebreakers come in. So Lee, go ahead. I know you had some thoughts there.
Yeah, I've been trying to unmute for a while now, but
Just don't mute yourself again, Lee.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got to deal with the background noise from here on out. I'm not going to mute again. Yeah, a couple things. And Bill was touching on it just now, but definitely with the cost per acre, there's a lot of things that are not, that I've learned really this year after being in the scoring process and picking Annie's and Bill's brain. There's a lot of things that are not on that necessarily accounted for on that list that goes into consideration. And yeah, cost per acre, I know it doesn't have a point value, but it is huge. You know, if there's been projects, I think every year of you know, a lot of mulching, and mulching is incredibly expensive, huge cost per acre. And so doing something like that, you know, if you couple it with something else, that's it's doable. But if you put down $20,000 in mulching, it's probably not going to happen. And the other thing is, you know, as far as geographical issues, you know, you can have projects outside of that priority area. I know bottomland habitat has been huge here in the past funding cycle, and so if anything, you know, if you have some really good habitat, the more you put in your packet, the better. The more you put in about habitat, the better. You know, remember what HIP is for. And you know, think about upland bird and those priority songbird habitats, and anything you can put in your management plan. You know, beef up that management plan. Put some long-term goals in there. Some follow-up treatments. You know, if you have a 10-year plan, that's great. You know, something in the future that you can show us is you have a long-term plan, and it's not just going to be a one and done. As everybody knows, as natural resource managers, you can't. It's not a one and done. When you go out there, when you mulch, you spray, or you burn, you have to have follow-up treatments. And one other thing before I stop ranting, the cooperation history, that doesn't necessarily mean the cooperation with HIP and with Annie. You know, it can be cooperation with other entities, you know, other agencies. So anything you can put in there, say if you're a TFS guy, you know, if you have, if the guy's been involved in SPB, if you're an NRCS guy or TFS guy, you know, if they've been involved with EQIP, you know, put all that stuff in there. And the more information you have, the better. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and we really just want to know are these cooperators going to do the work? We don't want to be putting money or obligating money out there to folks that aren't going to complete the project.
Yeah.
That's why cooperation history is important.
Absolutely. And that's why project managers are really important too. That's something that, you know, can be lost a little bit. You know, you get a landowner set up and you think he's going to do it, but we're counting on those project managers to follow up with those landowners. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to hold their hands because vendors are hard to get a hold of, and it just takes a lot of follow up, especially with the weather we've been having.
Yeah, those are all excellent points. Thanks, Lee. And Micah, I'm responding to you in the chat right now too. But the known turkey priority areas, or known turkey areas within the Nature's River priority, I don't think that one was shared. But I'll make a note that we include that one along with the priority areas for the standard HIP. Ruben had a question. He brings up the point of, he had someone in the Trinity River priority area ask if we would consider holding a minimum of one guaranteed proposal to get approved per working group area. We had never discussed that, Ruben, but I can write that down. It's a good suggestion. They value the ranking system that's in place. However, they think it would promote and encourage members more if we could have at least one project approved per working group area. I think that's something that we can talk about at our next steering committee meeting to see what everyone's thoughts are on that. I think that would also require getting a project from each working group. And I don't know that every working group has always submitted a project before. Lee or Bill, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that would take a lot more commitment from the separate working groups. I mean, there's some that are that have a lot of projects, and then there's some that don't have any. So it's a nice thought in theory, but you know, it's going to take more projects from more working groups.
And Rusty's point too, a project should stand on its own merits. That's a good point too. And so I can bring this up, Ruben, with the steering committee at our next steering committee meeting for sure, and we'll discuss.
Oh, can you hear me, Andy?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ruben.
Okay, yeah, copy. Yeah, thanks for unmuting me, Bill. And you know, I had this discussion with the member, and I think what it was, since you know we were a new working group area, and I guess their morale was just a little bit low because they didn't get selected. But I don't want to make it seem like we're given I don't know how to put it, participation awards for each working group area by holding a minimum of one a proposed project that gets approved for each area. Because I understand, like along the Neches River, that northern part there in Madison County, there's a need, especially if, most of our turkeys, are utilizing that corridor. Hell, if you get proposals in that area, of course, you're going to funnel more money towards that way. But I was just wondering, for new areas and new sites within each working group, just to kind of encourage, those members to, reach out, because I think that's some of the issues I'm seeing with our new working group, even though I know it's new, is the fact that, hey, will they even, look at us or consider us if we're trying to start from, square one?
Is this the Trinity River working group?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. To Rusty's point in the chat, some of those projects, I think we got 2 projects from the Trinity River, if I'm remembering correctly, and both of those projects had extremely high cost per acre. So I think that factored in. I'd have to look back at the ranking system, but I think they ranked pretty low too, just because it's a new working group, the proposals might not have been as strong, and the cooperation history just wasn't there with those landowners either, I think, because they were relatively new to working with Parks and Wildlife, if I'm remembering correctly. But I agree with Rusty too, that a project should be able to stand on its own merit. So I think next year that there's a much better chance of Trinity River projects being funded, because those were kind of last minute developed projects. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I just want to say, Annie does a pretty good job of following up with every proposal and making sure that they know sort of what went wrong and what went right. Whether their proposal was accepted or not. But feel free, and please, if you don't feel comfortable doing it now, please email Annie or Bill or I, with any questions with why didn't we get approved, because it comes down to these minor details at the end, and there's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. Like Bill was saying earlier, some of them ranked within 20 points of each other, and so once again, the more information, the better, and it's definitely worth it to give Annie or Bill or I a call too, and pick our brain a little bit. So yeah, leave it at that.
And those projects that are all mulching or majority mulching is a very high cost per acre, and that, like Rusty said in the chat too, is virtually a deal killer for the steering committee. They would rather fund something where they're going to get a lot more work done than someone going out and mulching, and then the follow-up on that that mulching is, you're going to have to burn herbicide anyways. So it needs to be, if there's going to be mulching involved in a project that's approved, it's probably very strategic, and not just going out and mulching and not explaining follow-up or anything like that. I will compliment you though, Ruben. You're one of our rock stars on the Habitat Incentive Program. You create really good proposals and you submit a lot of them. So kudos to you for that.
I had just a comment. Ask folks if the submission worked better this year. We went through a generic website, Google Drive, with an email directly for the RFP submissions. And us, because last year and the year before there were attachments that didn't make it to us. Some were being sent to Romulan space, I think, but it seemed like all of them were submitted on time without any incidents this year. And I just wanted to see if anyone had problems in the submission process of trying to get the material. Some of them were larger files to us.
I would say too, if you do have any more concerns or questions, feel free to email that email address, netxrfp@gmail.com, and treat it like a one of those anonymous submission boxes, except it's not anonymous. If you have any more comments about the RFP process or anything like that, just shoot that email an email.
Okay. Well, moving on to working groups and progress on news, is to any of the working group leaders, in that discussion, we wanted to get feedback on steps in the process. We've gone through that, the submission, the RFP process, and we wanted to ask if there were working groups that we needed to add people to the group, if there are new members that need to be added that are on our group. And specifically work group leaders, you can unmute yourself now if you have any thoughts. And Ruben's already spoken up. If you have anything to say there, Ruben, or Jeff Reed can't be on today. So Rusty, if you have any thoughts for the Neches River group, feel free to bring that up. So we're gonna post. We do have a number of new members that were brought in. I know Robert Spade had added some folks to the Caddo Big Cypress Bayou priority area. Reagan, any new members for the Red River? We haven't heard anything new there. Or Larry LeBeau, I don't think Larry's on the call today, but Sabine River priority area.
Red River group is, I mean, basically we have the same members. A few new ones from, you know, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We got another member working with Steve Airy up there, but not really any new members.
Okay. Ruben, any other thoughts on the Trinity River group?
No, that was my only concern as far as project, you know, proposals. But I just would to say that we're grateful that you all extended the buffer on the west side of the Trinity River to include in the priority area as well. And I believe that buffer, was it a 4 mile or 6 mile buffer? I don't know if y'all have the map.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the 4 mile. Okay. And so if any of you all are, you know, new to that update, if y'all could show that map, that'd be great. If y'all know anyone in those areas, you know, feel free to share my contact with them. But we got a good working group. Just need to finalize and plan a virtual meeting now, I guess, for this fiscal year. I was in the plans of trying to have a in-person meeting this past spring, but of course, you know, that got shut down. So just trying to do things virtually now.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I know we've had some. Jamie Hooker has offered to chair the Open Pine Working Group. We're looking forward to that. And there may be others that want to join that group. I think we've already covered enough on the overlap of the Northeast Texas CDN with the both the GRIP, the Oaks and Prairie Joint Venture counties in the Northwest, and then the overlap with the Longleaf implementation team counties in the Southeast. There is some interest in trying to expand that cooperation more. So if there's no other questions on the working groups or the teams, I suggest we move on and talk about opportunities with prescribed fire. Lee, you think you and Andy are ready to roll with that?
Yep. Yeah. Just real quick, this is we're gonna let Andy share his screen here in a second. So hopefully that's up and running. But okay, and unmuted as well. So, but just real quick before I hand it off to Andy, you know, and speaking of working groups too, there's been all sorts of issues with the prescribed fire working group, with not going into huge details, but with TFS involvement. And so I've suggested that we have someone with TPWD that's in charge of that. And so in the process of making that happen. But one event that we're going to hopefully be putting on, and Andy and I spoke about it, will probably be January. And I also spoke to John Hawkins about it, but putting on a prescribed fire burn workshop and it'll be select people that are in this, and it's similar to the program that Andy just did on Alzan. But we should have a good place to do that in Overton, where the meeting was last year, where the CDN meeting was last year, and have a good site to do hopefully some live burning there on the McMillan Forest that TFS has an agreement with now. So all pretty. We're hoping for some relief from COVID by January, and I know that's wishful thinking and it might not happen, but even so, we'll probably keep it to a limited number of people, and of course, have some outdoor activities, and hopefully one of those outdoor activities is burning. So that's in the plan. Not really the working group, prescribed fire working group that's working on that, but definitely a good project that the CDN is working on that hopefully happens soon. And Andy, I'll hand it over to you. Andy's going to talk about some cost share opportunities that happen every year, and we're currently in the enrollment period.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Volume working, good deal.
Sounds good.
All right, well, thanks for the opportunity. Usually, at this meeting, we try to cover accomplishments, so that's what I'm gonna try to get through today is the accomplishments that we had in TFS prescribed fire grants in East Texas. And I'll touch on some longleaf stuff here and there, but I won't cover that specifically. And I'll touch on a little bit of statewide stuff because it's in some of these spreadsheets and whatnot. But mainly we'll try to focus on projects that are generally in the CDN areas. So the first one here, this is a document I believe everybody is gonna either has received or is going to receive that's attending the meeting. And it's just a one-pager that we edit from time to time that people can put in management plans. You can put it in your stewardship plans or wildlife management plans. And it's an attachment that gives people information about the programs that we offer, and just kind of quick overviews. Try not to get too specific so that this is valid for 2 or 3 years at a time without having to make major changes. And so you can see the different programs for prescribed fire cost share that we're going to be offering and continue to do. And so just highlights, of course, maximum per applicant 500 to 800 acres, depending on program. And then the different programs that are offered there are anywhere from 50% to 100% cost share. But we generally don't cover fire breaks. We don't cover prescribed burn plan creation. So that 100% is that per acre cost of prescribed fire. If they find a way to roll in those fire breaks and roll in, other practices like like the burn plan, then they're going to get 100%. Other cases, landowners are going to come out of pocket quite a bit if they've never had a burn done before and never even been in contact with a contractor. There's the programs. I'm going to go through most of these today real quick and just show you this year's accomplishments. So we've talked about the community protection program before. That's the one available within 10 miles of the National Forest, using U.S. Forest Service funding that we received to help with mitigating wildfire threat around the National Forest. Number 2, we used to call this program the National Fire Plan, but we, for various reasons, because of the funding source, have gone with a different name. So there'll be a little bit of learning curve as we edit the name, but this is the State Fire Assistance for Mitigation, and we split it into 2 regions. The Central and East Texas program is the 43 counties that are eligible here in East Texas and over all the way to I-35. And then we split off and ran a separate program in the Western counties, Panhandle, West Branch, that area, because their burn window is a little different. So I won't talk much about that program today, but we do have funding available all the way almost statewide now. And then the Neches River and Cypress Basin Watershed Restoration Program. That one kind of mirrors a lot of what the CDN does in those 2 watershed areas, where instead of looking at wildfire mitigation around communities, that program is looking at habitat restoration for water quality. And so it looks at a lot of the same things that the CDN looks at in all of your matrix in consideration for fundings. And then the Texas Longleaf Conservation Assistance Program, always try to include that in any of our documents. And that's just, obviously that's Hugh Simpson and the Longleaf Task Force funding, but we try to keep all those links on that program so that people can find those applications too. And the websites there, I'll cover that in just a bit, and some features of the website that might be important to you guys. So here's the applications from last year. You can remember in the past maybe that I've shown you that we've gotten 500 or so applications. And what we've done now is we use one common application for all 3 programs offered in East Texas. So instead of having a large number, if somebody wants to apply for 2 programs, they just check the boxes now. So my number of applications received basically was, cut into a third because people can just check boxes. But you can see their total applications, 283. You can see how those spread out, and they tend to echo where we are getting a lot of the CDN applications as well, but it also gets a little bit larger. And it really focuses around that, the eligible areas. So you can see there's some gaps in there that those places are probably not even eligible for funding. One notable thing is we have funding available in all 3 of the major metropolitan areas along I-35, and I don't even show I-35 on the map because we never receive anything from Travis County or from Fort Worth or any of those communities. But at some point, hopefully somebody will be willing to burn near those communities, and we can also start working in that area. So here's what the community protection program looked like. All of these dots represent accepted applications out of the ones we received. So we approved 48 landowners to burn, and we were able to have 37 complete those. On average, all these programs had an average year in that 80% completion rate. So we did not see a major, 2 out of the 3, I guess I should say, had similar 80% completion rates. COVID did not seem to affect our contractors. They took about a week pause just to make sure when it all kind of hit the fan, and they found that they were legal to burn under ag exemption. So they kept moving forward and really had some good success. And so total accomplishments for that community protection program was 7,886 acres, and we reimbursed 200,036. So pretty good year this year with 37 completed. And as with this program, those that didn't complete, they have to reapply, but then they'll be automatic approvals next year, and they get a second year to try and burn. If they fail to burn 2 years in a row, then they have to lay out for a year. They don't get accepted that third year. Again, this is the National Fire Plan. Yep, go ahead. Was there a question? No? Okay. Let me get this chat window to make sure. And so the National Fire Plan is the program that we renamed to the SFAM this year. But you can see where there's the 25 applicants that we approved. And you can see those are the eligible counties. And again, this program does not overlap the CPP program. So it has to be more than 10 miles away from the National Forest. Again, it's about protecting communities, but it's a different funding set from the U.S. Forest Service. And so these counties that are highlighted in yellow are ones that have these community wildfire protection plans. And then we'll come in and do these prescribed fire treatments around their communities. This program historically has a lower completion rate. Most of these projects are less than a mile from a major metropolitan area, of a high density neighborhood of some type. And so they historically have had lower completion percentages. And we think that's mostly due to smoke concerns. They have much tighter burn windows. I don't have a way to solve that. So we'll keep trying to do treatments right on the edge of neighborhoods, but we know that we're gonna see low completion rates when you force people to burn between a highway and a subdivision. And there's the number. So 1,500 acres completed for 45,000 reimbursed. 11 treatment sites were completed. Then again, this is the Neches River Cypress Basin program. This overlaps a lot of the CDN areas of concern. So this year we had enough funding for 22 projects. And of those, then 15 of the 22 completed. And you can see where those lay out. So the projects in Northeast Texas did much better than the ones in Southeast Texas in terms of completion rate. Total accomplishments. Total acres treated was 3,688 with 27,000 reimbursed. And this program is, instead of being a full 100% reimbursement, we call it a 75% cost share at $22.50 an acre. And a lot of these treatment areas, their maximum approval is 800 acres, but in several cases, we've had treatments that went over that, and they're credited here as part of the cost share. So one of the last things I wanted to cover, just a couple more things, is recently we developed an interactive map so that applicants can see the eligible areas, and they can zoom in and find out if they're eligible. With these programs, of course, they require a burn contractor before they apply. So they have to work with a certified and insured burn manager. And so the burn managers are using these maps also, so they can look at their current list of landowners, see who's eligible, and actually go out and contact their own landowners and bring applications to us. So the majority of the applications we see, everything's an online application, but we know these are coming from contractors, they're coming from foresters, rather than individual landowners applying who have never had a contact with a contractor. And we think this map is helping both when landowners cold call us to find out, hey, am I eligible for funding? But then also from the contractor base and forester base that's out there in the private sector, they're able to reference this map and cross-reference it with their groups. We haven't provided shape files in the past of where this stuff lays out. It changes from year to year. Mostly the National Fire Plan communities that have that community wildfire protection plan. We get new counties every year. So this interactive map, at least for us, has worked well. Let's see if go ahead. And so this is an option. Something we've talked about with Hugh Simpson is expanding this map to include more programs. Right now, it just includes my 4 programs. But I think a long-term goal of mine would be that the CDN eligibility map would be available either in this format just to project managers and those that are going to submit applications, or for the CDN to consider making their map eligible to the public on the web. It's not terribly difficult to do with somebody that knows how to work it, not me. But it is at least an option, instead of passing around your shape files, is just make an interactive map where people could zoom in and look at them. And so we hope that in the future we can expand this map to be more useful to everybody in this group. And then, of course, the online application is another route that we went with a year ago. With this online application, it uses Survey 123, which is an ArcGIS format. So what it produces for me is these 200 to 300 applications are already in ArcGIS with a point on the map, and all their attributes are filled out. So it cut weeks of work out of our scanning paper copies of applications, putting them into Excel and those steps. And then we were able to basically make them score themselves based on the questions that are asked and the locations. So in the old days, it took me a month and a half to score applications. And now the system produces all of that data in about a week with someone that's better at ArcGIS than me. So just some thoughts as you go forward in different ways to develop your programs. So the last thing is a news release. I shared this with you guys as I believe everybody's going to get this, but it has our funding amounts there. So this year we had a total of $400,088, and that includes the TCAP longleaf funding as well. And last year, total accomplishments we just discussed here was 13,100 acres treated in East Texas with prescribed fire. So that's available to you. I did have just a couple of little things to cover too, but before we get to that stuff, are there any questions on the grants? Question. will you offer private landowners the service of installing fire breaks for training purposes for your staff, or is this a myth? Lee, you wanna take that one? Certainly not.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna type up a
it's
response.
nuanced, I guess would be the best way to put that.
So the answer is no, it's not a myth, but it's not exactly across the board either. West Texas, to my knowledge, does not do that. So they do have a ranch land management program that they've just implemented, and so there are some opportunities there, but not a whole lot. And so if you get on those fringe counties, you might not have a lot of luck. In East Texas, there you can do fire breaks for training purposes, but we are charging. So we're charging, I believe it's $75 an hour now, and so some of that gets knocked off just because we like we were talking about, it's for training, and so the dozer hours aren't necessarily as productive as they would be if you hired a private contractor. But I will also say it's somewhat of a slippery slope if we get into the business of someone applying for either EQIP or for HIP, and we're providing fire breaks as well. And so I know I wouldn't feel comfortable with that in my district. I don't know whether there's been whether that issue has ever been addressed, but I wouldn't count on a local district helping you with fire breaks if it's with a program that you already have some cost sharing with. So.
That's really good, Lee. Thanks for highlighting that. I think, like just to reiterate, it's probably going to differ by district. But if you have a really good example of where we should be helping a landowner, and we think that they can cover that $75 an acre hour, or $70 an hour,
75.
Then tie in with Lee, and we'll try to work through it and see what we can do. Especially if it's something like that it's good training. Just to reiterate, we're, as an agency, always very careful not to compete with the private sector, and that's what you're running into there. And so it's got to have a good justification for why we're doing that. And Jamie had a question about long-term funding. Let me see if I can get this to bring up. One second. Cancel that. I'll have to change my sharing. Let's go to that one. So I don't have it printed, but I did have this one right here. This table that says TFS prescribed fire grants, Jamie. So if that's close enough to read it, you should be able to see that, I think. And so I don't keep track of things often in terms of funding every year. I just keep an eye on acres treated. So that's what those acres treated are going to reflect what our funding source has done over the last, 7 years since I've been working with it. And so in our community protection program, that one around the National Forest, we have seen an increase in funding each year. And then we've added some other programs as well that you can see there. That Fish and Wildlife money that we received for the Neches River and Cypress Basin is a new funding source we picked up in 2017. And then the other programs that are added there are funds that we had for wildfire mitigation. And I began to implement programs that would cost share prescribed fire instead of doing mechanical treatments or paying for other methods of wildfire mitigation. And so the total funding source from the federal government hasn't changed much other than the implementation of Jeff's U.S. Fish and Wildlife money in 2017. But the increase in funding is mostly coming from cost improvements. And that comes from our online application system and streamlining how we review applications and then approve those and inspect those. And so I've been able to cut money out of day-to-day operations, fuel, hourly wages, and that kind of stuff, and shift those over from those type of projects over into just straight money going to landowners. And that's our goal is always to try to get more funds on the landowner side. And I would expect that next year in the 2021, I'll be able to increase that on that SFAM grant specifically. I have plans to try to get more money into that statewide prescribed fire cost share funding. Thanks for the question. Let's see. All right, so then let me go back to screen sharing. Excuse me 1 second.
Hey, Andy, I'm giving you a 5-minute warning. We're going to try
Copy
to
that.
get Jeff on before 10:45. So
Perfect. All right, so my last thing to cover is the Texas Prescribed Fire Use Survey. Just an update, because I think this, if I don't bring it up, somebody else is going to show it, and then they'll be asking me questions then. So we did, since the last time CDN met, I think we've done 2 surveys of statewide prescribed fire use. The 18 acres, they gave a real late request for that around Christmas. And then the 19 acres were requested this spring, summer. And so some of you may have seen emails requesting your acres treated. So this is what we look like. The trend was down in 2019. So in 2018, we set our record in terms of reported acres. 400,000 acres treated with prescribed fire in Texas is what we think everybody's doing. All the agencies, all the landowners, anybody we can get a hold of. That does not include crop residue burning. We don't consider that prescribed fire. It does include rangeland, understory, and site prep. And then in 2019, again, we went down to 325,000. And that was mostly related to the agencies, mainly the U.S. Forest Service, having a helicopter accident and shutting down their program halfway through the season. So it took a pretty good hit there. And it was probably weather related also. The last time we asked what people's main impediments to implementing prescribed fire, and again, we're talking about people who are implementing fire that answer these questions. We're not talking to people who have never had a prescribed fire on their property. It was weather was number 1, limited capacity was number 2, and then we had a tie between liability and smoke management. And so this is what the 18 numbers look like. I don't have a pie chart like this for 19 right now, but I'll zoom in just a little bit. I know is small print, but that's what the acres treated look like across the board. And so you can get an idea that the majority of the prescribed fire in Texas is implemented by agencies. So over half is going to be government implementation, both on private and public lands though. And then the pie chart on the top right includes a bunch of burn managers that stayed anonymous and one burn manager in West Texas that wanted his company named. And so they represent about 25% of the acres treated. And then the rest are going to be nonprofits and private landowners. And so most private landowners that do a lot of burning, they belong to these prescribed burn associations. And then there's a handful, we know mostly in East Texas, who are burning and not members and not reporting those acres through the PBAs. So that's what the acres treated look like. And if you'll remember, this was mostly reported voluntarily, and there's no requirement to report, so it's probably a little bit short. Let's see, let me see if there's one more question. Have anyone had contractors saying they won't burn an area because of concern of crown fire and request site prep such as mastication be implemented first, or are you usually able to burn safely by limiting the weather conditions and fuel moistures? The short answer there, and I guess I'll take that since I'm already the one talking, there's probably some experts in here that would love to speak up and have more knowledge even. But the short answer is normally not. Normally, almost any piece of ground in East Texas can be burned without mechanical treatment, but there are plenty of locations where a burn manager may request that and say it needs to be done. In my opinion, a thinning operation when it's time to do it is much cheaper and a better route to go if you need mechanical before you can burn it safely without causing crown damage. But there's a lot of nuance there. And so it is a possibility that your best treatment is mastication before you burn, but not always. And try to work around it because darn, it's expensive. So are there any more questions before I stop? I think I'm right on my 5 minutes, Lee. All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody. There's probably plenty of question and answer stuff to go, but thank you for your opportunity to present this stuff. I really like what CDN does. I'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you to Annie and Bill and Lee. Super good this year, a smooth process and really professional. So thanks for all your efforts and keep it going. It's a cool program.
Thanks, Andy. And if you have any questions for Andy, you could continue to submit them to the chat room. We'll get around to them. Bill said that Jeff Rosh is on and requesting to get on before 10:45. So we're going to jump forward to him real quick, and he's going to talk a little bit about future funding.
Cool, thanks. And Bill or Lee, if I don't cover everything you expect me to cover, please chime in and I can continue to talk about some of that stuff. But for the most part, I'll just talk a little bit about it from Parks and Wildlife perspectives, where we are. That still seems like Parks and Wildlife is still very committed to future funding for the program. Very exciting, especially as efficient and in demand this seems to be. I think that's something for all of us to keep in mind. Y'all have heard me say this over and over through the last several years. Being able to dictate demand and things along those lines goes a long way. I think for the future, there is a bit of a wait and see, as with all government agencies right now. We have a little, and NGOs for that matter, we have a little bit of a wait and see for the next legislative session in Texas. So that would be FY 22 and beyond for us. State agencies have gone through a process of submitting declined budgets. If it doesn't go any more than that, we're going to be good. Our plan is going forward through those years that Parks and Wildlife probably, I think both the straight stamp dollars, the migratory and upland stamp dollars, and the PR Neches River focus areas have, both proven very successful, and we've been able to implement those in the ways we had hoped in a relatively efficient manner. And so I would think that both those funding things, I think we have, Annie, you might chime in here, or Jason Harden, we got one more year or is this the final? We have one more year of the Neches River funds, correct? I think under
This
agreement.
is the final year of Neches River.
Okay, and
Jason and I are working on possibly extending it, so there could be a little bit more in there.
Yeah. And so I think the short answer is we're very hopeful that that'll be fine going forward from a standpoint of Parks and Wildlife. Other things to think about in here is we've got such a large group here. We've got all sorts of partners paying attention here. And one of the things to do is continue to think about how we grow the program, organizations that are listening in here and others, and see how, want to be a part of the success of this program in a sense, in a cash way. So thinking about ways that might look for an organization. And I think the JV and CDN staff and Parks and Wildlife staff will continue to seek grants. I think that's something that we have found we want to continue to be real successful at and figure out new opportunities and ways to do some of that. And so I know Bill and others are always thinking about that sort of stuff. And so we're going to continue to do that. In the very short term, I think because of the success and how we're getting the funds out in a timely manner, there is potential opportunity for funds within this fiscal year, additional funds. We've got some groundwork laid internally with stamp dollars that if we see extra funds before the end of FY21, that this would be one of the areas for delivery that we try to focus some of those extra dollars in. I think the chance of that is probably pretty good, that there'll be some. This won't be huge amounts of money, but maybe $30,000 or something like that. So I think from a steering committee and delivery staff standpoint, we need to be ready. I think our hope internally is we've been talking about making sure we maybe get those funds available to delivery project managers, so that if there is burning in those proposals, that would be an option, because these funds, if they do come through, will have to be spent before the end of August 21. So wait and see, and there may be some value in prepping for it in a little ways. Be ready to hit send on an RFP for those additional dollars, just so we can really make some quick turnarounds. And I guess this is a call to project managers to be ready if you have projects lined up for some of that stuff. Bill, I don't know what else you want me to go down the road here a little bit with funding and things. You might have stuff to steer me a little bit with that, but what are your thoughts there?
No, I think the main thing is I think that there needed to be some thumbs up optimism about future funding. We also, and we'll talk about it later this morning, that we have a number of other avenues we plan to pursue. We don't want to get into a situation where we're going to slow down. We need to ramp up. We're going to try and capture as much Farm Bill money as possible in the near future to try and do some of the things that folks are getting more comfortable in. We want to see that pie chart that Andy showed show a heck of a lot more private land in that pie chart. That's our goal. So anyway, I think, you know, the agenda's a guide. We jumped the tracks about 10:15, but we got it under control, and we appreciate you jumping on early, Jeff, to give us that update.
No, it's my fault. I'm the one that wasn't paying close enough attention to my schedule.
No, it's good. Annie, any other thoughts from you or Lee?
No, I just think that's a really great update, Jeff, and thanks. We will keep the program going as long as we possibly can, and the demand is definitely there.
No, if people are paying attention, Annie, and all that's all. That's how well this is working in the CDN, beyond just the delivery side of it, just the engagement and how we come together. I find myself thinking about, you know, how do we replicate this somewhere else in Texas? So I think this is pretty good. So.
Yeah, I know Jason just sent me a question. Any update on the Dallas Safari Club grant? And Laura Ashley's on, but we may want to cover more of that later. We have made a request to make sure they realize that we can include virtual meetings in that request from the Dallas Safari Club, another avenue of funding we would like to pursue. And it's geared towards cooperation, outreach, and developing field days and things of that nature. Laura Ashley, any news since we talked a few weeks back about it?
They have not responded at all. Their response was that initially was that they just put everything on hold because of COVID. And when Bill and I let them know, gosh, it's been a month and 2 days ago, no response. So
That's good. We'll keep people posted on that. I can tell you that Laura Ashley's persistent, and I'm persistent, and we'll just see what they come up with. All they can do is tell us no, and but we're trying. Again, you know, it's and we'll talk about it some more. We've got a scheduled break now. Annie and Lee, if you're good, I'd like to give folks 15 minutes to break, and we'll just leave your machines on. You know, you don't need to get off unless you just need to do something different, but I'll be on before 11, but let's take a short break and give people a chance to stretch their legs, get a cup of coffee, and we'll see you in a little over 10 minutes.
So we thought it might be interesting to do kind of a pine tour across the Southeast involving NWTF foresters and those other partnering agencies in those different states to talk about kind of their silvicultural practices and some issues that they have in their states, look at the challenges that they have with their sites and soils, talk about their restoration efforts and how they use prescribed fire, and then possibly get them to kind of talk about how they're managing the open pine to kind of help their endangered, threatened, or declining species in each region. I think that'd be really interesting, since a lot of our open pine discussions that we have as the CDN kind of stays within East Texas. it'd be kind of cool to see what's going on in other places and maybe get us some ideas. So the second option is kind of more of a classic East Texas open pine tour like we've done in the past, where we go and on Forest Service land or other public places where they're actively managing for open pine stands, kind of discuss herbicide, prescribed fire, natural regen success or not success, look at optimal basal area and canopy coverage for the desired understory plant species or the desired wildlife species on those sites. Some potential areas that I thought of for here are places that, since I've kind of come on and joined the CDN, we have not been yet. Fox Hunters Hill, kind of near Hemp Hill, FRC land in Newton County, and some Scrappin Valley properties, which, by the way, I saw my first group of turkeys in this area, so that was pretty cool. That's why I recommend these, because I'd like to see them again. And then Boykin Springs. This third option, third idea that I had, kind of relates to ecologic and economic impacts of open pine management, where we can kind of discuss how timber and wildlife can both benefit from open pine management strategies by using thinning, fire, herbicide, and then have some people come in to talk about and compare the economics of a typical pine plantation versus open pine, along with the ecologic benefits that both of those will have. For this one, I thought it would be kind of interesting if we could record it, since it's kind of more, you know, we can use it as wildlife and forest managers, but I thought this would be interesting to be more for private landowners and consultants, to kind of, so they could see and compare those numbers, if they're considering doing kind of more of open pine management, or, you know, if they want to get out of just the regular pine plantation. So for this one, I thought maybe we could travel to private lands, since it's kind of hard for a private landowner to picture their own property in a Forest Service that's managed with federal dollars. And the only one that I really know of for sure that's super active and would allow us any day would be the Winston. So I'm up for suggestions on that, of other private lands that people know of that are managed well, or, you know, that they wouldn't mind us coming out there to kind of do a quick discussion and talk to them about how they feel about their open pine management, or whether they have it or not. And then the fourth idea that I had is kind of this can kind of be tied into a lot of these other ideas. It's just something that I broke apart, is to kind of compare open pine and pine plantation structure from establishment through the life of the stand to harvest. So we can kind of look at all the management strategies, and then take a look at what's in the understory, what the structure's like, what the plant species is like, and maybe have some Parks and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service people kind of come out and talk about which wildlife would be using the stand at its specific stage. I don't think, you know, in a lot of the pine tours that we do, they're awesome, and it's interesting, and it's a lot of good information, but for especially some new people coming in, or people who kind of have a specific species that they study, like for me, I'm, you know, kind of focused on turkey. It'd be really cool to have people who know about a lot of different other wildlife kind of come in and let us know which, you know, birds would be using, you know, as each successional stage goes on. So but I don't have any suggestions on places to go on that. I guess we could just drive around to any Forest Service property and find a bunch of different places. But those are kind of my ideas. So if anybody has any suggestions, or if you don't like one, or you like one more than the other, or have an opinion on what would make one of these better, let me know, because I'd be happy to hear what you have to say.
I
Bill,
don't
you want me to
wanna- I just wanted to thank Jamie for taking this on. We were struggling trying to figure out how, you know, everybody seems to be pulled 15 different ways at once, but but we know that one of the valuable things that this CDN has done is bring people together in these field days and workshops and coming up with fresh ideas using things that she's laid out there. We'd like some feedback on that. Use the chat box to give her some feedback. We also wanted to reiterate there's lots of really good continuing education material out there. I've got some that we'll send out with the notes. October 2nd, the Wildlife Society is having a day-long workshop, forestry for wildlife biologists. It's going to cost a little bit of money, but we think it's a high value. October 7th, prescribed fire to manage glades for quail and plant communities in Arkansas has a lot of inference to what we do here in East Texas, and on. We'll send these others that continue on into October, late October, November, and December. And if you have information of YouTube videos that are worth sharing that you would like to see, please send them to myself or to Annie Lee or any of your work group leaders, and let's continue that effort. Any questions for Jamie? Anybody want to offer some suggestions? If not, Jamie, thanks a great deal. And we will move on. I wanted to reiterate that we had that Q&A roundtable chat room discussions, and I brought those questions up. We'll have an opportunity later to talk about that. We've heard from Jeff Rosh, a lot of positive information there from Texas Parks and Wildlife and opportunities for funding. What I'd like to talk about now is this information about how do we continue to move forward with our primary practices, especially intermediate pine practices that thin, that burn. How do we promote prescribed fire, and how can we engage Farm Bill, NRCS, in a greater way in our Piney Woods counties? We've talked about this. We intend to prepare an RCPP project proposal, a regional conservation partnership program proposal that would encompass most of the counties in the Piney Woods. We've talked about it with a working group that included Northeast Texas, the Texas Longleaf Implementation Team, and we think there's ways we can expand our funding opportunities for landowners, especially with practices that require these 2 to 5 year intervals of return maintenance with prescribed fire or brush control or herbicide treatments for invasives, a number of these things. And I wanted to tag team with Will Newman, who's been with us a couple times over the last year and a half, 2 years, with his previous tenure with the Oaks and Prairie Joint Venture and Quail Forever. Will, your thoughts on bringing some Farm Bill funding into priority practices?
Hey, Bill, sorry to interrupt. Just real quick, can you admit Tim to the meeting?
Well, I don't see him here as in the waiting room.
Okay.
Let me.
I think he was trying to call in, Bill.
Okay, I don't see a. Let me see here. Don't have anybody in the waiting room. Oh, here we go. Just popped up. Sorry about that, Tim and Will. Okay. Tim, can you hear us? Tim Sigmund?
Yeah, I got you. I had myself on mute there.
Okay. So Will, any thoughts from that lead-in that you want to add to?
Yeah, I think we just want to make sure that we're looking at all of the aspects of the Farm Bill and the funding associated, especially and the marketing kind of power behind the Farm Bill. If we can engage that region of the state and using more of the Farm Bill programs that are available, it's kind of a high waters raise all boats kind of situation. So if the limitation on private land is engaging those private landowners with funding programs, the Farm Bill is going to be the biggest one out there. So we need to look to things like that aren't traditionally being used right now in East Texas. CRP is a big one. So whether that's for marginal pasture land, also grassland, CRP grasslands, other CRP where there is cropland. Many of those counties have plenty of acres for CRP. But then also EQIP and CSP offering traditional opportunities for implementing incentive practices, getting payments for implementing practices. And also the big one is going to be RCPP, and I think Bill has plenty to talk about with that. So there's an opportunity for SAFE program, state acres for wildlife management, and they send out for state and proposals for new state priority programs. And the state of Texas submitted several renewals and projects. We would really like to see some sort of special wildlife oriented CRP program.
Hey, Will.
Yes.
Will, we're having some trouble hearing you, or at least I am.
Yeah, I think everybody
Video
is.
off,
Might
sometimes
try
that helps.
removing your video might help.
Yeah, they tell me that if your cell phone is near you, it creates this feedback.
We'll see. Can you guys hear me better?
Yeah, for now that's a little better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was mentioning that there is a process for submitting proposals for special wildlife funding for CRP under the SAFE program, the State Acres for Wildlife Enhancement. And the state of Texas submitted proposals for 3 existing programs in higher row crop production areas of the state. But we want to make sure we're not limiting to those traditional areas of the Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. There's crop production acres in East Texas within this geography. And there are CRP practices that could help this area on acres that qualify for the program. So it may be worth, as we move forward, paying attention to those types of opportunities and having a small group within this group potentially looking for what practices we might put into one of those programs and how we might make those types of proposals when we get those opportunities moving forward. Anything else specifically, Bill, that you wanted me to mention?
Bill, you're on mute.
Here we go. Sorry about that. I wanted folks to know that there are opportunities out there that we need to capitalize on. The Farm Bill program in East Texas is is not being used to its full extent for forestry practices. There's a fair amount of money that goes to replanting, site preparation, but nothing happens for the most part after that first to third year of the plantation or of any pine forest activities. And we're looking at opportunities across all the counties. Can you see the map, Annie? Is that map showing up okay? And this is what we talked about earlier. We have high priority areas that touch almost every county in Northeast Texas. And when you get farther south, you see the dark gray come in. That's where the longleaf counties, the Texas Longleaf Implementation Team counties come in. And the overlap there are the dark blue, Panola County, Rusk County, Cherokee County, Houston County, and South. And we want to capitalize in an RCPP project that will focus on those practices like prescribed fire, like brush control, intermediate thinnings, the things that we have found a great level of interest in by landowners through our HIP program. And the fact that we know there are many landowners out there that want this type of incentive operational in these counties, we feel like that we can be a bridge to get more people involved in farm bill programs through the RCPP. Will, if you want to clarify any of that, I also wanted to reach out to Frank Baca, to my friend Brian Townsend, who's joining us, Jason, and all the folks at the Bryan College Station zone office to let's work together and come up with a RCPP proposal that makes sense. And let's see how we can work better. All of us can work better than any one of us. And we want to prove that through the RCPP process.
Hey, Bill, can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, just wanted I liked what Bill said about timber stand improvement sort of being left out of a lot of EQIP and CSP and farm bill money. And it's that NRCS and TFS and TPWD, but TFS and NRCS definitely have a lot of dealings with those forest landowners. And so that starts with district foresters and district conservationists with NRCS. And so just making sure that we're all on the same page there. I feel like that's overlooked a lot. I know it is in my agency, and I think it is sometimes in NRCS too. We push those reforestation programs pretty hard, but there's a lot of TSI opportunities out there, and HIP is a good place to start. But there's limited funding there. If the RCPP happens, that's great. It's more money, but just making sure that we're connecting with our landowners and letting them know that we're still with them throughout the with any phase of forest management, and just a lot of opportunities there. So HIP is a good way to start. And but if you're one of those guys that didn't get a HIP proposal accepted, please forward that on to NRCS and make sure they know that those opportunities are there, and there are landowners that want some of that timber stand improvement, which is really the focus of Northeast Texas CDN.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And RCPP and General EQIP have a lot of good practices and tools available that can be offered to those landowners for different resource concerns. So if a landowner's interest is wildlife habitat, HIP isn't necessarily the only tool for the job. General EQIP can do that. RCPP, if we get one off the ground here, could certainly target those practices for certain purposes. But yeah, we all want to be on the same page on how those are being prescribed and where they're being targeted. And so I would encourage everybody to engage in whichever tools are available and use the best tool for the job. And where HIP could be more competitive and funding be a little more limited to do some bigger practices, EQIP, and especially if we get an RCPP where there is dedicated funding for this, the primary partner, which could be the CDN, to make those ranking decisions. We could see a lot of opportunity for funding more projects, more diverse projects that would normally get funded with HIP or with General EQIP, where it's a more competitive funding pool.
Any other questions or thoughts for Tim or for Will?
Hey, Bill, this is Jason Holt with NRCS. Could I make a comment or two?
Sure.
Just I think everyone understands, but just to make a point or two of clarification here, those timber stand practices, we have several of those scenarios available in our cost list right now. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is getting those customers to the door to pursue. I would say that the typical customer, if there is such a thing, is coming in for that reforestation. And so that's where the majority of those EQIP dollars are going. But if we can find out about those people that want to do stuff in the middle of the rotation, the herbicide treatments, the burning, and those kinds of things, we definitely have avenues to provide funding there. And another thing, I guess, that I would point out is we've gone through a major change this last year with the way our, I guess, our applications are ranked. And as everyone knows, funding fluctuates from year to year. It has become quite a bit more competitive this current fiscal year. So we're seeing some different things at the county levels on who's getting funded and what for. So, and I think that process about what ranks and what ranks high and what ranks low is going to continue to evolve. And from the standpoint of the RCPP, if we set one of those funding pools up, I think, in my opinion, that's going to be one of the keys, is to set that ranking up to where those dollars target the specific type of projects that the CDN is interested in. But anyway, I appreciate y'all putting this together.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Jason. I think the RCPP is a tremendous opportunity to target dollars for prescribed fire and for those open pine practices, and actually incentivize even more than the standard EQIP all the counties within the piney woods that we feel like are valuable and that we see an interest by landowners. We just need to lead them into that right path. So that's our goal. I was going to turn it over to Jenny Sanders and let her add her. It's more than 2 cents. It's several dollars worth of information about Texas Longleaf Implementation Team. She has been involved with the RCPP discussion and where they're at with their National Fish and Wildlife Foundation funding for this year, and where she sees things headed in our partnership that connects to the south of Northeast Texas CDN. Jenny, you got?
Cool. Yeah, can I share my screen real quick?
You can.
Okay. I was just gonna throw up our new, can y'all see that dashboard?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is our, the Texas Longleaf Implementation Team's, our new kind of accomplishment dashboard. You can kind of see what we've been up to since the beginning of the team, we've put about $1.1 million on the ground for longleaf restoration and enhancement in cooperation with many of you who bring the projects to the table and help with outreach and all of that. This last year, we were able to do $171,000 worth of projects. And then we did get refunded this year for 2021 from NIFWIF. You can see on here that we have $127, almost $128,000 currently. We got the NIFWIF grant we got this coming year was mostly focused on outreach and personnel and things that we were hoping would really promote the program. Based on our activities and our success this past year in 2020, we may end up putting some of those dollars back into on the ground management activities, restoration and enhancement. So some of that budget could, this number could actually go up a little bit, the 128,000 that we've got available, but we've for sure got that at this point. And again, we've got some pretty good amount of funds for outreach and education. So I'm excited to see, Jamie, what you were talking about, and I think there's an opportunity for us to pitch in there if there's any funding needed for that, as well as what our team can help with just on more of a personnel level. So that's all I have specifically, unless anybody has any questions.
No, feel free to use the chat box or speak up if you have any questions for Jenny. But I can't say enough about how much has been done over the past 6 to 8 months with the longleaf implementation team's focus on trying to get some money on the ground. It's been a great experience. So we'll keep heading that way, Jenny, and thank you for spending the time with us today.
Of course.
Again, the chat box is always open, but we're gonna turn this segment over to Marcus DeJesus and John Bathos, who are going to talk about the River Access Conservation Area Program. This was something that I was totally unfamiliar with until Marcus, who is our new aquatic steering committee member on Northeast Texas Conservation Delivery Network, brought it to my attention and how it could complement some of the things we're doing within the watershed working groups that we have. So with that, Marcus, I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you give an intro to John, and then we'll let him share his screen and give us a presentation.
Great, thanks, Bill. Well, I just want to show my face to the group, mainly because I am kind of new to the group. I've replaced Spencer Dumont last year after his retirement, and I haven't been able to make it to a meeting yet, so I apologize for that. But it's just sitting here today, it's been amazing to hear all the great work that's going on in this area and getting to learn a lot of what's going on the wildlife side. Of course, we're always squeezing fish on this side of the road, making fishing better, but it's at some point my involvement is about really networking, maybe what we do with what you guys are doing, and putting some thought into this, talking back with Jason in the past, Jason Estrella, and then now with Bill. We would like to share maybe some opportunities with the group that may be able to function well. In this case, it's our RACA program, which is coordinated by John Batros out of the Habitat and Conservation branch. He's going to come up in a second and give you all the talk. But basically what we're thinking is, we have this river access program that could probably be utilized by private landowners to not only develop access to our rivers in East Texas, but also be a venue to maybe showcase some of the work that that's going on in riparian areas and along the rivers down in NETX, maybe the Cypress Bayou, wherever it is, you know, if there's something to showcase, the ROCA program would probably be a good way to do that. And the coordinator for this program is John Batros, like I said, and he's gonna give you a presentation what the program is about. And I look forward to working with you furthermore in the future. So I'm gonna pass it on to John. John, thanks for coming.
Sure, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, like Marco said, I'm just going to do a quick little talk about the ROCA program, river access and conservation areas, and you know, hopefully get y'all's feedback on what you think, and maybe some you know, places where we can kind of collaborate and coordinate. I'm going to take over the screen here. Let's see.
There you go.
Alrighty. Can y'all see that?
Looks very good.
Great. Like I said, I'll be going to be talking about RACA today and give you a little background and what the program is about. Right now we have 18 leased access sites. We just a little bit. We lease private property for public access to the rivers. We have a couple grants I'll get into, but we fund leases that we work with the landowner to provide access to the public, as well as develop a little demonstration conservation area for the public to you know, view and enjoy. Right now we have 18 sites across the state in about 10 river basins. We have provided fishing access to about 200 river miles with these sites, and we have done some sort of improvement or habitat conservation project at 9 of our sites currently. Right here is a map. You can kind of see where they are. We have a lot in Central Texas, kind of what the names of the rivers that they correlate to. They're on the right-hand side. We get our funding through 2 federal grants. One is through the Sportfish Restoration Act, the Boating Access Grant program. We currently have $270,000 for the next 3 years through that program. We mostly, that money is dedicated to supporting our current leases. We have spent about half that money just so far for the FY21 leases. We have an additional grant through the VPA HIP that y'all are all familiar with. We applied for the first time about 4 years ago for VPA HIP funds. We're granted money back in, I want to say it's 2016, for river access, you know. So we applied for a new grant in combination with our public hunting access program for a little over for about $1.8 million, and we have about 824,000 of that to spend in RACA. Again, most of that money is earmarked for leases, but some of it can be used for you know, conservation projects, like I said, habitat or angler access improvement. And we can get into that a little bit more. But we also get funding through the conservation license plate sales, our rivers license plate. It typically brings in about $20,000 of state money that we can use for match or to pay for some of these access projects or improvement projects. We also get funding from the Parks and Wildlife Foundation. They have a fund for conserving Texas rivers that we sometimes get some donations through them as well. We are looking at expanding the RACA program over the next 3-4 years. Right now, like I said, we have 18 sites. We hope to add another 20-25 over the next 3-4 years. You can see, if you look over here on the map, like I said, we have a pretty good presence in Central Texas. However, like the north and east regions are are lacking. Right now we have a site there in Chandler, which is near y'all, or I think in y'all's region, as well as on the Sabine River at Grand Bluff, there on the Sabine as well. But otherwise, you know, we're lacking a lot of these sites in those areas. We have put out a recent request for applications from landowners. I'll go through that just briefly here. We're looking to partner up with streamside landowners for public access to fishing and paddling on Texas rivers. Our current request is open through September 30th. However, the RFA is open-ended. We accept applications year-round. We're offering leases between $6,000 and $15,000 per year. I'm sorry, $6,000 and $15,000. And basically that RFA kind of describes what we're looking for and who to contact. I think I sent it around, or Bill forwarded that around as some background information before this meeting. Kind of what we're looking for in a site, you know, we're looking for locations that are offer unique wilderness setting, intact in-stream or riparian habitats, or with potential to restore those habitats. You know, offer high quality paddling and fishing opportunities. Currently, places that have limited public river access. We'd like to strategically position them with other access points, such as a park or a paddling trail, or even a road crossing, you know, so people can float from, you know, point A to point B and take out at a safe legal place. We also looked, you know, we also look for sites that are near population centers that we kind of use as a proxy as for utilization. We really like to, you know, try and get utilization of our public resources on the rivers. And, you know, we found by positioning them near population centers, you know, we tend to get a little more use out of them. Some conservation delivery projects, since that's what kind of y'all are about here. What we basically can do is do some native riparian vegetation plantings or seed dispersal. We've done that in the past. Access improvement, there's a photo there of an access improvement project, as well as kiosks to give kind of a conservation message, leave no trace, you know, river etiquette type messaging on the kiosks. And over here are some photos. We had a volunteer day on the Llano River where we did some plantings, did a trail improvement. This is a project on the Colorado River where we improved the access. It was real muddy right through here. We put some gravel down and just allow people to get to the water a little easier. A few more examples of seed dispersal up here in, oops, sorry. Seed dispersal up here in the upper left-hand corner. Some of our volunteers, here's a kiosk going up, some trail improvement there in the lower center. And again, some of the plantings that we did on the Llano River last year. I do like to monitor usage and the best way I figured out doing it is, you know, I put up a game camera somewhere where I can see the access point, and I count people with fishing gear and or kayaks. You know, it kind of gives me a good estimate of how many people are using it and, you know, kind of when. We do get a lot of other things on the game camera, such as this horse here on the right. I thought that was a funny photo. So future collaboration opportunities, you know, cooperation on initial sites or identifying potential sites, identifying priority reaches where we can look for landowners within those priority reaches, improved user surveys, you know, ideas for how to monitor usage a little closer, and coordination projects, you know, such as use of volunteers. I think all these ideas would be, you know, areas where y'all could help, perhaps, if you're interested. And I think that's really all I have. If there's any questions, I'm open to those now.
Yeah, please chat box or speak up if you have any questions for John or Marcus. I was intrigued with the conservation delivery element of the program, and we talked about leveraging funds to help promote open pine and some of the riparian improvement, bottomland hardwood improvement that could be done in and around access sites, and use the outreach component as an opportunity to showcase what we do in Northeast Texas and what ROCA does. So Marcus and John, I think there's an opportunity there for people to get in that game. So I'll let other folks speak up.
Hey, John, thank you. It's Laura Ashley, Caddo Lake Institute. So I'm thinking of a lot of our landowners who are along Big Cypress and Little Cypress Bayou that we work with. I'm trying to understand if the access is from the road, like you drive up and take your kayak, and most of these people, there's a long way from the front gate to the bayou, and that
Right.
I think is going to concern them.
That, you know, you typically, that's kind of what we're looking for, is someplace off the road. You know, and what some landowners have done have like roped off an area, calling it a parking area per se, trying to keep people in one spot, and then access the stream through a trail or whatever, however you get down to the water. You know, it's sometimes not ideal for kayaking to drag your kayak from the parking area to the water, but you know, we don't want, not necessarily every location is you know, can you drive down to the water very easily if you don't have a road access or something like that. So I think that's kind of what we've been working with so far. Sometimes it is more of a parking area off a road, and a lot of those times those areas get a lot of use just because people know of them, because they're kind of familiar with the road crossing. So we kind of, you know, we're pretty flexible. You know, if it's a gated situation where there's a gate and some property you got to drive through to get to the access area, we would post you know, contact information on the website. People that want to visit would have to contact the landowner by phone or whoever representative they elect, and get a gate code, or you know, that's how people kind of monitor you know, how much usage they get. They don't want it just open to anybody that wants to come in. A lot of landowners, like you're saying, these are private properties, and are okay with allowing, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the number is. We ask for a parking capacity of about 10 to 20 cars generally. So, but rarely do you get 10 cars at the same place at the same time. It's like I said, it's mostly 1 to 2, sometimes 3 people will be there at the same time. And the landowners can kind of dictate as to how, you know, how much use they get on any given day.
Is there some sort of relief from liability in case somebody hurts themselves on their property or during the paddle?
It's a good question. We generally fall under the hunting laws for liability. Like, you know, people lease out properties all the time for hunting, and we generally fall under those liability laws. Some of our landowner partners are some sort of outfitter already and have additional coverage. So, I mean, that may be something to consider, you know, but you know, we don't offer any other liability coverage, as we just offer a lease rate and our kind of guidance and expertise as to a conservation area.
We do have one landowner cooperator who may also be an outfitter for kayaks and excursions. Is that a problem that may be invested into, like a private business essentially?
It's not a problem. We do have a couple of sites that, like I said, are kind of river outfitter type, or more like camps, river camps. They can, we lease property from them to allow people to come access the river. We'll work out a deal as to how many folks that is that generally can come and access the property under our lease agreement. But if they want to continue to charge folks for shuttling or whatever else they do, that's their business, So, we'll work out a deal for some access. It doesn't necessarily have to be all of their services. That kind of fits within our models. I was contacted by Miss Thomas on the. Is that who you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remind me of her first name.
Christy.
Christy Thomas is approached. I just was contacted by her yesterday, and I need to call her back and talk about this.
Good landowner cooperators, and she would be a great one to work with. She's one of the first I thought of.
And location is a big deal. So where you are in relation to another access point is a big deal. And I know that I'm not exactly sure where her location is, but it's close to the Lake of the Pines Dam, I believe.
So she's involved in both Lake of the Pines and Caddo Lake, but it is along Big Cypress.
Big Cypress there. Yeah. That sounds like a great property. Yeah. So I'm still need to follow up on that one, but if that's who you're thinking of, I was just contacted by her.
I'm so glad she reached out. I think they might be perfect for this.
Great. I hope to.
John, we're gonna have to wrap it up. Did anybody have any other questions for John before we go to the next speaker? John, I think you hit on some positive points there, and I think we've got some opportunities for connection there. I really like the idea of leveraging some of your conservation delivery demonstration areas to maybe some things that we do. Our last item on the agenda. And appreciate it, John, Marcus. I think it was a great way to get a foot in the door, and we'll get some things going. Our last item on the agenda, so we don't keep too far past the lunch hour, sticking with the agenda, we have Oaks and Prairie Joint Venture has a new fire coordination effort. Thomas Jonke, is that how you pronounce your name, Thomas? If you'll unmute and introduce yourself.
Bill, you got it pretty good, Bill. Yeah, it's Thomas Jonke, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm going to try to share my screen here so people can see my face if they so choose, or they can step away and start eating their lunch. But
it looks good.
Perfect. Well, Bill, I do greatly appreciate the opportunity, and to everyone else still listening, as Bill said, I'm the new prescribed fire coordinator as a part of the Oaks and Prairie Joint Venture. And it's a new position and opportunity for the organization and for Texas in general. I think my closest counterpart, and I'm backtracking, I'm funded through the Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever organizations. And so my closest counterpart per se is up in Nebraska. So long story short, I have a heck of a lot to learn, and my bosses have a heck of a lot to learn in order to figure out what all opportunities this position is going to come about and to reach its fullest potential. But to my understanding, the goal of my position and my responsibilities first and foremost are to make the connections and introductions, to say, hey, there's somebody out here that's being paid to think, talk, and work on prescribed fire year-round here in Texas. There's going to be a lot of focus within the OPJV so basically central Texas areas, but ultimately I think it can expand throughout all of Texas. We do have some GRIP efforts going on up within the Northeast Texas and y'all's CDN areas. And Derek Wiley knows a lot more about that, so I'm not going to try to say anything incorrectly on what all we've been able to do up there. But I believe right now I'm just trying to make the introductions. I know I've had the opportunity to speak with some of you and just trying to figure out who the players of the game are. Who are the pieces of the puzzle, kind of what are their shapes and how can they fit together? And ultimately, what all prescribed fire, what are those, what do you want to call it? What are those barriers that people are facing? What are the successes? And also, how can we get more on the ground? And then I know eventually it's going to also lead to tying that into whether it's, East Texas restoration, Central Blackland Prairie or Post Oak Savanna restoration. Big one right now is pollinators, so monarchs. How can that fall into certain parts of the state? And just kind of seeing where all those pieces tie together, see what monies are available, and make sure that whether I'm coordinating a workshop or assisting with the demonstration, that we know who those players are to be invited to the table to best help those landowners out. So just like Bill's doing with y'all, trying to see who those pieces are and how they can all fit together.
Well, welcome aboard, Thomas.
Thank you, Bill. I
think we've heard a fair amount this morning about fire, how to promote fire in the Piney Woods, and Andy's talk was a good preview of the fact that 400,000 acres is a great accomplishment, but we need to put another 0 or 2 behind there to really make an impact. Annie, Lee, I got 2 minutes before the top of the hour, and any thoughts to close out? Sounds like we've got.
No. Yeah, I don't have anything, Bill. I think we've kept them on here for quite a long time, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there.
Sounds good. And Thomas, I am sure we're going to get you and Derek over here, especially in that northern sooner than later. I appreciate everybody's time today. Good job, all the presenters, and I thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. It's these virtual meetings are a little bit of a struggle for me, but sometimes an old dog can learn a trick or two. I think still. So anyway, Keith, anything you want to add? I just saw your face pop up.
No, I just wanted you to know I was still here.
Okay.
I didn't quit on you early.
Nobody's put up the white flag yet. No mas.
Thanks to everybody.
Okay. We'll see you later, and we'll be sending notes out soon.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Good seeing everyone.